Today's Patreon shout-out comes to you with thanks for Kerry Driver. Okay, kicking off the new Crimson Vow set with Runo Stromkirk, up against another Runo Stromkirk deck, so that doubles our chances of seeing a good game with this commander. Up against Morophon and Small Rada as well. An alright hand for us. Probably wouldn't keep this if we didn't have the Sensei's top, because we don't have any black or acceleration there. But we're likely going to be able to get the Maskwood Nexus and the Stunt Double into play, so we'll try that. Get down a land and Sensei's top, and we drew into Whelming Wave, by the way, which should only be useful against 2 players, unfortunately. And then it's just some lands for our other opponents. Morophon gets down an Arcane Signet. And during our upkeep, we will spin the top and see what we've got on top. Okay, wow. More basic lands and a Muldrifter, so struggling on colours here, and yeah, we're going to have to evoke that Muldrifter, I think. So we'll just put that Muldrifter on top and draw into it. Play a land for turn 2 and spin the top again, just so that we can look at an extra card and pass through our opponent's turns, and yeah, Knight's Whisper would be useful to clear some cards off the top if we had any black mana, but we don't. So if we're going to be casting Muldrifter, it doesn't actually matter what order we put these in. Rada coming down for the Gruul player, and that's what we could do with Runo casting an unmarked grave, so searching for a non-legendary card, putting it into the bin, obviously setting themselves up for flipping their commander around. And they have searched up the Deep Sea Kraken. That's the one that has to spend 9 for 3 mana. 6/6 unblockable. Shouldn't have any trouble getting that into play this early. Another land for Morophon, doing well on mana and colours, but just tapping out and passing, thankfully. So we draw into the land. We knew that that was coming. So we'll play out Muldrifter. That is evoked, so we have to sacrifice it, but we do clear those 2 cards off the top, so hopefully we can spin Sensei's Divining Top into something decent next turn, i.e. some black mana. Another land for Rada, and they managed to get down the Shaman of the Forgotten Ways, so yeah, we're struggling to get into creatures. We're going to have to be careful of that biorhythm. They're a million miles away from that yet, thankfully. And then swinging in with their commander, they go in towards the Morophon player, making some mana with that. And down comes Runo, wanting to transform that straight away. I'm of the mind that you want to transform it a bit later, i.e. after you can put a Lightning Greaves on it or something and swing in with something really big. At the moment, they're going to be able to swing in next turn, but not get any copies of any creatures into play, so yeah, we'll see how that pays off for them. Morophon making a red piece of mana with a basic mountain, but not doing anything and passing to us, which is quite ominous. We will spin the top again during the upkeep. Oh, and yet another basic island on top. This is pretty unlucky. Yeah, we've got all the jewels and fetches and basic swamps and everything, but just really hitting unlucky here. Got a Gyruda and the Cavalier on top as well. We'll draw into the Cavalier this turn, because we can actually play that next turn. And then once again we'll spin the top and look at an extra card. Okay, Arcane Adaptation might be pretty good. We do have sea monsters in this deck, but we've got some non-sea monsters as well, as we can see from the Cavalier we just drew. So yeah, similar to Yuriko, Arcane Adaptation might be useful. We'll put that on top. The Biorhythm creature taps for mana and makes a Voyaging Satyr. And then Xenagos, God of Revels, coming into play. So unless Morophon's got something to say about it, the Runo is about to transform. And it does successfully transform there, so that means our Stunt Double is going to be very useful. If we'd copied the Runo with this, then it would have tried to transform and couldn't actually transform into anything because there's nothing on the other side, but now that they've transformed it for us, the Stunt Double could actually be key here, because we're really far behind thanks to being screwed on our colours. Anyway, they suspend the Kraken that they got back into hand, and now turning in sideways, going in at the Morophon player. And the Morophon player did have something at instant speed, casting Thrix, the Sudden Storm. That can't get rid of their commander, thankfully for us, because we do want to copy that, like I just said. And revealing to us now, with Sunrise Sovereign being cast, that this is very likely a giant tribal list. Sunrise Sovereign, +2/+2 and trample on your other giants. And that can't be countered thanks to Thrix. So Thrix getting buffed up to a 6/7 with flying now, as well as trample, and deciding to go in at the Rada player. So we obviously know our draws here. We get into the Arcane Adaptation. Let's throw down this Cavalier. And we get to Brainstorm here, take a counter off the Deep Sea Kraken. A 6/6 unblockable, don't forget, and that has 6 time counters on it at the moment. The Brainstorm reveals a couple of big sea monsters and a land, so still not getting into that black mana. Brynelin is the one that can bounce things for us. Legendary, unfortunately, so we won't keep the 2 copies, but we will be able to bounce blockers out of the way potentially. So we'll put the Gyruda and the Brynelin back on top, and we'll keep the land. Rada tapping out the Dorks as well as the lands straight into an Avenger of Zendikar, and that is a Xenagos in play as well, so that's a pretty scary one. Animates the Xenagos as well, only making 4 plant tokens at least. But they do have a land to make, so plus counters going on the plant straight away. And yeah, as you would expect, Avenger of Zendikar having the Xenagos trigger pointed at it, so that is now a 10/10. And it does get haste from that. So Rada swings in at the middle player, and then Xenagos and the Avenger of Zendikar go in towards the Giant's tribal player. No blocks, so a heap of damage being taken. The Deep Sea Kraken has another time counter removed, so that's on 4 now. And we see a main phase Fact or Fiction from the other Runo player, and they're pointing that at us, so we get to make a decision here. Really don't want my opponent drawing a bunch more cards, so yeah, they've already got the Runo flip, so Brainstorm isn't too much of a worry. We'll let them choose between the card draw and the removal along with mana. Okay, that's fine, they went for the card draw, but don't have as much mana to do the card draw with. So with the untapped blue land, they go for the Brainstorm, so we know of one of the cards that's in their hand. The big X spell, of course, that we just gave them. And with that, they pass the turn over with 6 cards in hand. Expedition Map for Morophon. Can sacrifice it to search for any land. And then drop in a basic swamp. And there's a Phantasmal Image, alright. Knocking a time counter off the Kraken again. But that can come in as a copy of anything. Gets blown up if it's targeted, and it comes in as a copy of the Sunrise Sovereign. Yeah, I'm really liking this, so lots of Sunrise Sovereigns coming into play potentially. And these big beaters, thankfully not coming in at us. We don't look like too much of a threat thanks to our mana being screwed and only having 2 non-land permanents in play. So both of those going in at Rada. Both have trample, so the plants aren't too useful here. Oh wow, and in response to blocks, that's a nice play. Cackling Counterpart. That's an instant, make a token copy of a creature you control. And that does have flashback as well for 1,000,000 mana. So yet another Lord coming into play, knocking the Rada player all the way down to 15. We draw into the Gyruda we shoved on top. Let's throw out a land. And I didn't spin the wheel there, spin the top, because I didn't know if I wanted to go for the Gyruda. I think it's a good idea to set up with the stunt double, because it would be pretty good with the Cavalier, aiming at copying my opponent's commander, of course. But there's an argument to be made for throwing out Gyruda as well. I think we'll just pass the turn at that and try to not look like too much of a threat. Maybe they assume that we have big sea monsters that we can't afford. Another Avenger of Zendikar trigger because Rada played a land. Okay, I'm really aggressive here. The Rada player turning everything in sideways towards the Giants player. These two really hitting it backwards and forwards to each other. So as long as they're leaving us alone, I don't mind. Using one of the Giant Lords to block the Biorhythm creature. So that takes them off some mana. And then Xenagos being blocked as well. So they plummet down to 1. Wow. So almost knocked out there. Only 1 card in hand as well. And then the Rada player just decides to tap out and pass with only 3 cards in hand. Surprised that they didn't have anything to cast there. Maybe Rada didn't want to cast a spell into Deep Sea Kraken so that it doesn't come out and lose summoning sickness. So it comes out during the upkeep instead after the last time counter is removed. Oh, and it gains haste when it comes in off that. Alright, so yeah, it wouldn't have made a difference if Rada had cast something or not. It can swing in here. Forgot about that. Oh, and that's a bad one for them to have copies of. Massacre Worm coming into play here. Luckily can't get copies of it this turn, because like I said, it does have to be attacking in. And it will have summoning sickness. But gets rid of a couple of Rada's creatures, including the commander, so they will lose 4 life to that, thanks to the Massacre Worm triggers. And then turning in sideways, Krothuss will copy the Kraken as you would expect. So getting 2 copies of that thanks to it being a Kraken. And this is what we want to see. If we don't do anything this game, then we can be grateful that we saw at least one Runo player go off. So yeah, looks like they're finishing off Rada with the copies. And then the original Kraken is going to go in and finish off the Morophon player. And then we've got Krothuss coming in at us. Can't block with our 5/5 Cavalier anymore because thanks to the Masco Worm it is a 3/3. Alright, well those two made short work of each other and then Krothuss came and mopped them up. So now it's sea monsters versus sea monsters and I don't fancy our odds here in all honesty. But we'll try our chances. Let's spin the top first before anything else. Have a couple of lands, finally getting into black mana in the Drowned Catacomb. Myriad Landscape showing up a bit too late, but we'll put the legendary Bounce Kraken on top that we saw before. And then before the end of their turn we'll go for the stunt double, can become a copy of any creature thankfully, so make a copy of the Krothuss. We don't have to jump through the hoops of flipping it round. So we might be able to keep up with our opponent, I don't think so though. Draw into the Bounce Kraken that we just shoved on top. And Whelming Wave, pretty useless here. We could keep them from getting copies of Massacre Worm, but I think it's the unblockable Kraken that they'll be wanting to copy. Could go for multiple copies of the Cavalier with Arcane Adaptation. That will make it into a sea monster, but yeah, I might want to go for Gyruda. I think we'll see what we draw into. We'll get one Brainstorm with the Cavalier, so let's turn in sideways with both of them. Get a copy of the Cavalier. Alright, a Shriekmaw, and we can actually cast it here. So we want the Drowned Catacomb in hand, and we want the Shriekmaw, so let's just put these big sea monsters on top. And then dealing 13 damage to our opponent, that's a decent chunk. Hopefully they won't be able to get us on the swing back here. We'll drop our first piece of black mana on turn 7. And I'm going to just hard cast the Shriekmaw because it would be really good to get multiple copies of that next turn. And try to keep blowing up these unblockables. I don't think it's actually going to be relevant, but we can at least swing in with it as well. So we'll blow up the original Kraken with that. Unfortunately can't afford the adaptation, can't draw any cards either. So we'll just have to pass at that, maybe we can represent some counter magic. Just going straight through to combat, 5 cards in hand, and they get another copy of the 6/6 unblockable. Another 2 copies that is, so taking 24 just from the Krakens alone. Could block with the Shriekmaw here, but we're not going to die, so if we're going to win, which we might be able to with the Arcane Adaptation now I'm working it out. Yeah, let's not block with the Shriekmaw. We might actually be able to get them next turn, I'm just working out. Yeah, surprisingly, might actually be able to do it here. So on their end step, we'll spin the top again. And obviously the Slim Voda is still on top, pretty useless in a mirror match. And then we've still got the Brynelin, the Bounce Kraken as well, which is just going to be too slow without haste. Luckily we've got a fetch land now, finally starting to fix our colours. We'll be able to shuffle these useless sea monsters away and draw into something else if we actually get another draw step. So drawing into the Misty Rainforest, we will shuffle those sea monsters away, turn that into an Underground Sea, and then drop Arcane Adaptation for 3 mana. And we can just turn everything into a Kraken, seeing as how it is right there, ready for us to click. So now, assuming our opponent doesn't have any instants, they do have 5 cards in hand, we might be able to just squeak out a victory here. Turn everything in sideways. We'll get 2 copies of the Cavalier and get some Brainstorms while we're at it. Looking at totally fresh cards here thanks to the shuffle. More black mana finally showing up. Cyclonic Rift. We don't have the mana to overload unfortunately, so that doesn't help us. We'll just put the 2 lands back on top. And then we only get to look at 1 fresh card with the other trigger from the Cavalier. And that's a Warm Power Stone unfortunately, so we'll just dump the 2 lands on top again. So the question is, do they have anything for us? There's every chance. They could have a Cyclonic Rift of their own. Alright, no, that is Mission Briefing, and they don't have any more blue mana now that they've cast Mission Briefing. Don't think they have any spot removal in the bin that they can cast. Just dumping a couple of lands in the bin, including a Cabal Coffers. Alright, and surprisingly managed to squeak out a victory there. I thought they might have had Ether Eyes or some spot removal or something. They only had to remove 1 creature from our side of the field, and they would have been able to take us out next turn there, so yeah, pretty lucky for us. If it hadn't been for the fact that we were in a mirror match, we wouldn't have been able to get our commander online quickly enough to do anything in that match, I don't think. Anyway, really glad that I've been able to bring you a cool Runo Stromkirk game. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave it a like and subscribe if you did, and you can consider donating on Patreon if you really liked it. Link is in the description for that. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.